Hey there, welcome to another Ask Me Anything session where yours truly is answering all your questions about the publishing industry and how to write a better book. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, and go into the description below to grab my free story self-assessment. It is a worksheet designed to help you pinpoint the strengths and weaknesses in your own manuscript to take it to the next level. And it is going to sign you up for my newsletter that has exclusive insights and tips that are not currently available anywhere on my channel. Thanks so much for all of the questions that you submitted, and I'm excited to dive in today. The first one here, where's a good place to start with the comparable titles for my work in progress? I have taken a look on the most recently published books in the fantasy, paranormal, romance, suspense, but I can't seem to find one that matches the style of my writing, prose, nor the plot. Can you please break down in a bit more detail how we can find comparable titles so it doesn't become a put all your eggs in one basket and hope the search matches best with something you find, but isn't entirely 100% reflective? Also, what matters in comp titles? There have been a lot of questions recently about comp titles, so I can tell that a lot of you are anxious about finding comp titles, and I understand how challenging it can be, especially because you created this novel that's wholly unique and wholly your own. So how are you supposed to compare it to something else, right? However, comp titles are very, very important, especially when it comes to the traditional publishing industry. In fact, whenever an editor at a publishing house is preparing to make you and your literary agent an offer, they actually base it on comp titles. So there really does have to be some kind of benchmark in the industry if you would like your book to be traditionally published. That said, and what I think your question comes down to is that there is not ever going to be a perfect comp title. So I think you need to get out of the mindset of the comp title has to perfectly reflect my prose and my plot and my characters. You're not going to find a comp that is perfect in all of those ways. In fact, when you are writing your query letter, I recommend incorporating multiple comps to reflect different aspects of your book. So think about the structure of my book is X meets Y. What two books and or TV shows or films, remember you can also use those as comps, what two comps combined makes something similar to your book? Doesn't have to be spot on, but it should be a similar readership, a similar vibe, a similar genre, similar tone. Maybe your book incorporates a similar character as this book slash film slash TV show, but it has the same setting as this book slash film slash TV show. So try to dissociate from the mindset that you have to find a single perfect comp within your genre exactly, because it's unlikely you're going to find that. Instead, give the agent an idea of what would be on the same mood board as your novel, for instance. The places that I recommend looking are Amazon, just because you can whittle down the genres pretty specifically. Like you said, paranormal romance, for instance. You can do those types of searches on Amazon. Also, Goodreads has very specific search capabilities. People also create lists in Goodreads that are disseminated among the community where you can go to, a list of 100 paranormal romance books and scroll through those. So those are my two recommended places to look. I have more tips on how to choose comp titles in a whole other video, so I'm going to include that in the description below for you to check out. Here's another question related to comps, of course. How important are they to include? I don't read that many books, usually only a handful a year, and I haven't really read any that I thought were similar to mine, except in the most basic sense, like it was fast-paced, and certainly nothing recent. Do I have to worry that my querying is doomed from the start just because I don't have time to read dozens or hundreds of books to find something that is a close match to what I happen to write? Okay, so it is not expected for you to read hundreds of books by any means. Of course, literary agents don't have time to read hundreds of published books in a year. That said, I do really think it is valuable for you to read in the genre that you are writing. This is going to be very important for you if you want to become a traditionally published author, because you're ultimately going to make connections with other authors who write in your genre. For instance, you might have an author of a similar book blurb your book, which means when you see that review on the cover of a book that says, Jane Smith, author of this book, found it propulsive and riveting. If you are going to make a career out of writing and you want to see your book be successful in the contemporary publishing landscape, you do need to have some sense of what the market is like and what the reader's appetite is like for your specific genre. So I would try to make an effort to read within your genre as much as you can. At the same time, I don't think it's necessary for you to have read a potential comp title cover to cover. On Amazon, when you're browsing, you can read the sample pages as well as obviously the description, and that should give you some sense of the story and whether or not it aligns with yours. Remember, comp titles are just an idea. They're not supposed to be perfect, as I just mentioned in the last question. So I really would encourage you to try to come up with some comp titles, despite how challenging it is. If at the end of the day, it just feels utterly wrong and you're feeling really not comfortable with the comps that you've come up with, then it is okay to leave them out of the query letter unless the agent specifically requests them. But I do think it's possible for every querying author to find a suitable comp. So again, check out my other video on comparable titles and hopefully that helps you out. Next question here. I have heard that the minimum word count for a novel is 80K words. Agents and publishers won't consider anything with fewer words. Would you agree? The range that I actually went by, based on my experience in the industry, was anywhere from 60,000 to about 90,000 words is the optimal range for adult fiction. Anything in the 50,000, 40,000 word range is considered really more of a novella, and anything closer to 100,000 words starts to run the risk of being a bit too lengthy for a single volume, particularly if you're writing general fiction. Sometimes, yes, sci-fi, historical fiction, and fantasy can go a bit longer than 100,000 words, but for other genres, I caution against it. That's really the sweet spot that I see, so I would not agree with anything under 80K being immediately rejected by literary agents and publishers. There's many instances of books that I worked on when I was in the industry that were under 80K. Here's another question. I have a question about querying a rewritten story. If an author grows and uses part of a previous work but turns it into something else, does it still count as the same book? For example, when they write a new story with the same main character, or use elements of the plot for a different book in a different genre, etc. Where do agents draw the line? So the key here is that you said you transformed it into something else. Basically, if you are interested in re-querying an agent that you have already reached out to and who already rejected you for one novel, you can re-query them if it is essentially an entirely new book. The examples that you outlined, such as where you took a character but put them in a completely new plot, completely new situations, I would say that that's a completely different book. And if you reused maybe lines from one scene or so and worked them into this new book, that is completely fine because it is still a completely different story. If the overarching plot, the setting, the characters is all pretty much intact and the same, then I would say that the story has not transformed enough for you to requery the agent. But if you're kind of Frankensteining parts of your old book and reworking them, transforming them into your new book, then I would say it's fair game. All right, last question here. I'd like to find an agent who has relationships with Big Four editors. What's the best way to find out who agents sell to? So when we're talking about the Big Five or the Big Four, we are talking about the major publishing houses that dominate the book publishing industry in the US, which is Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, Hachette, HarperCollins, and Macmillan. If you want to get published by an imprint of one of these Big Five houses, then it is important that you find a literary agent who has relationships with acquisitions editors at those imprints. So to your question, how do you figure out if they have those relationships? Your best resource is going to be a website called publishersmarketplace.com. This is the publishing industry's leading database for all the book deals that go through the major publishing houses. Every book deal will have a blurb posted on the website and disseminated in their newsletter, going through the author's name, the title of the book, a little description of the book, the editor at the publishing house who acquired it, the imprint that they work at, and the literary agent's name. It's gonna have all that information on there. What you're gonna do is you're going to go to publishersmarketplace.com and either sign up for their monthly membership, which I think is like $25 a month, or you're going to sign up for their one-day pass, which is only $10, and type in the names of the literary agents that you are interested in working with, and then it's going to give you a list of all of the book deals that they have done. Then go through those book deals and look at the names of the imprints that they have sold to. If you're not familiar with that imprint name on its own, which you might not be because there are hundreds of imprints within the Big Five publishers, Google the name of that imprint, and it's going to tell you immediately which publisher it ultimately belongs to, or if it is a standalone, smaller publisher. That way, you can see for yourself what publishers the literary agents you are interested in are doing deals with, and if you are interested in being published by one of those publishers. Remember, publishing is ultimately a very network-driven industry, so if you sign on with a literary agent, they are likely going to present your book to editors at publishing houses that they have established prior relationships with. So looking at their list of past deals is going to give you a sense of who they might try to pitch your book to, and you can get an idea of if that would be a good match for you or not. That's all we have time for today, but keep the questions coming. Leave me a comment here if you have a question you would like answered in a future session. This is the queue I use when I am filming, and I'd love to hear what you are curious about. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. And don't forget to grab your free story self-assessment waiting in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.